This video is sponsored by Metatron t-shirts. Also extra content, pictures, videos and polls on Patreon. Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and the idea of magic linked to medieval times is not something new, nor is it a foreign concept in our minds. I mean, The Lord of the Rings has a medieval setting, World of Warcraft is very medieval looking, Eragon, Shrek, The Elder Scrolls, heck, the Arthurian legend itself has Merlin the Wizard. So we are used to see magic being more or less common, but definitely present in a fantasy world which is very much inspired by the European Middle Ages. But what if magic really existed in our world during the Middle Ages in Europe? How would the presence of magic, mages, spells and enchantments have affected the society, the people, and the development of weapons and armor? Do you like this sort of videos? Then don't forget to click the notification bell to never miss any. Although fantasy settings do have creatures and magic that differentiate their world from ours, there are still quite a lot of common aspects. The typical medieval feudal society remains pretty much unaltered from how we would picture it in our mind. But is that realistic? Well, realistic is a pretty big word to be tossing around while discussing a concept such as magic, but hey, let's have fun. Magic is a pretty huge variable, particularly if we consider what that word actually means in most of these settings. We are not talking about little kids spinning his cute wand around to turn a stupid fat rat yellow. We are talking hardcore sorcerers, magi and morlocks altering the very fibers of reality. Battle mages from the Warhammer universe, for instance, who are able to shift the tides of battle, annihilating entire battalions of trained troops with one spell. Pyromancers, necromancers, elementarists, shapeshifters, light magic, dark magic, blood magic, etc. And if you like colours, then Final Fantasy is a must mention, because you know, white mage, black mage, blue, red, green. They should add a pink mage now, shouldn't they? What do you reckon? Final Fantasy, Dragon Age, Dungeons and Dragons, in all these worlds, a mage is a force to be reckoned with. Magic is not some secondary element to the main story. Magic is a game changer, and that's what I believe it would do to any medieval world. It would fundamentally change it. But does it? When we look at the titles I've mentioned, we often see medieval kingdoms which function and look very similar to European medieval realms and domains. We have a monarch who rules the land, soldiers wear quite recognizable medieval metal armor, use typical medieval weapons, altered but still fundamentally recognizable. Aristocratic kings rule their lands while their subjects work the fields. And often, mages either work for the king, are separated from society, or are imprisoned and controlled by it. But let's pause for a moment. Let's say a group of actual mages existed in medieval Italy. Now, usually one common thing about all these video games or fantasy movies is that the moment we live the story, magic is already been around for a while. People know about it. They usually don't freak out when a mage casts a spell unless it's cast on them. We never really see or are told what actually happened when the first mage appeared and cast the very first spell. So let's do just that. Let's say magic first appears in Italy in the 1200s. We then fast forward to 1450. 250 years of magic. What would Europe look like then? First, I believe the rulers would be mages. I mean, regular nobility, blue blood heritage and whatnot. Who cares anymore? You can have all the money in the world, if you don't have the gift, it won't matter. A powerful enough mage, like a high mage or an archmage, in the land, he's gonna be the ruler of that nation. He would use his power to gain more power. So let's make a new map for fun. Let's say we have an Italian mage king who is a red mage. Cause you know, pasta and whatnot. Tomatoes were brought back from America, pal, and they were yellow and small. Oh, shut up and let me have me fun. Although that is true. The ruler of England is a time mage. The sovereign of France is a white mage, and the overlord of Germany is a summoner. First thing, the study of magic would probably be regulated by state law, because the very ruler understand its power. You gotta imagine magic as a weapon. Depending on how dangerous spells would be, it might even become military exclusive. So a new section of the standing armies of each country would have spellcasters or magic users. And I think it would be sensible to state that studying and practicing magic outside the boundaries of the law would be considered a crime. So, from this point of view, Dragon Age Origins is very realistic in a way, as in that game magi who do not reside within the tower, controlled by the Templars, are considered outlaw apostates. Although, still in Dragon Age the Templars can overpower magi and keep them in check. Probably in our world that just wouldn't happen unless we found a way to train elite knights and desensitize them from the effects of magic, if such thing were even possible. We do find that concept in Final Fantasy Tactics, where the stat faith represents a unit's belief in magic and spiritual phenomena. A high faith stat is double-edged in this game. Units with higher faith will deal higher magical damage and healing, but will also receive increased damage and healing from magic. An atheist in this game cannot use magic, but he's also not affected by it in any way. An interesting and original concept. If you don't believe it, it's not gonna happen. But let's say that doesn't actually work in our world, and we have a more traditional approach to it, whereby if you are struck by a fireball the size of a pickup truck, you will be burned to the ground, whether you believe it or not. In that case, I feel the only ones who could really stop wizards would be, indeed, wizards. And this leads us back to the idea that the most powerful mage would be in charge of everything. So how would wars be fought? Again, we need to imagine magic as a weapon. The real Middle Ages armor continuously evolved in response to the development of new and more effective weapons. In the presence of powerful battle mages, armor would necessarily evolve differently to how it did in our past. So let's consider for a moment what battle mages could do. Let's establish that the most common form of military magic used in warfare will be divided into three categories: fire, lightning, and healing, and we'll consider the first two. The reasons why I'm not discussing time magic or necromancy, for instance, at this point is because, again, time magic, well, there isn't really anything that armor could do unless we talk about enchanted suit of armor, which is an entirely separate topic. And as far as necromancy is concerned, well, I'll have a dedicated video from this series. What if the undead really existed in the Middle Ages? So if you're interested, check it out. Link in the description below. First and foremost, I think armor would have to become fireproof to resist fire spells. So probably they would need to come up with some sort of coating that could be applied on the plates to make them resistant to fire, because if not, metal will just heat up too much, be deformed, and any unprotected section would be burnt. So armor should cover completely the warrior, and it should be fire resistant. Possibly something similar to the way the Japanese coat their samurai armor in lacquer to render it resistant to the elements and avoid rust, sort of making it easier to maintain, but more like the sort of plaster that the Japanese, actually used on the predominant wooden structure of their castles, which made them fire resistant, sometimes it being white or black. Armorers would have to come up with some sort of thin coating which could do the job. But what about lightning? Of course, metal are good conductors of electricity. In the case of medieval armor, we're talking about steel. Steel is a moderately good conductor over short distances, although the most highly conductive metals are silver, copper, and gold. But wouldn't wearing metal armor while being hit with a lightning bolt just electrocute you? Well, it depends. Let's talk about the Faraday cage. Faraday cage, or a Faraday shield, is an enclosure used to block electromagnetic field. A Faraday shield may be formed by a continuous covering of conductive material, or in the case of a Faraday cage, by a mesh of such materials, hence the name cage. Sizes and shapes may vary significantly, but all of them use a metal screen that conducts electricity, creating a shielding effect. So what does a Faraday cage actually do? Faraday cages shield their contents from static electric field. An electric field is a force field surrounding a charged particle such as an electron or a proton. So what do Faraday cages look like? These cages often look distinctively, well, cage-like. Others use a fine metallic mesh. In the case of armor, since it would still have to function as protection against normal weapons as well as against magic, a mesh in conjunction with continuous metal surface would help to protect the wearer not only from electricity but also from stabbing and arrows. How would a Faraday armor keep a knight safe? As a Faraday cage distributes the charge or radiation around the cage's exterior, it cancels out electric charges or radiation within the cage's interior. In other words, a Faraday cage is a hollow conductor, in which the charge remains on the external surface of the cage. Given it was invented in 1836, but if late medieval nobility started to be electrocuted by magi over and over, well, I would consider that a big incentive towards this discovery. Armor might need to become thicker to resist any form of magic that could harm the wearers physically, such as magical daggers, magic missile, and whatnot. As we know, medieval armorers had to make modification to armor in order to face early gunpowder. And I think this could be relevant in a way, because the idea that the appearance of gunpowder immediately led medieval knights and men-at-arms to stop using armor is incorrect. Early gunpowder did not cancel armor. Good suits of plate would usually stop an arquebus ball at long range. Armor was also sometimes tested by firing a pistol or an arquebus at a new breastplate. So although it was possible at close range to pierce heavy cavalry armor, this would depend on the power of the arquebus and the quality of the armor, so particularly expensive and well-made heat-treated suits of knightly armor could still adequately protect the wearer, even in the presence of early firearms. Metal knight-like armor stopped being used much later, when firearms had become too powerful to be realistically stopped, and it was a very slow process. Oh gosh, is he alright? So we can assume medieval smiths would definitely try their very best to clad mounted nobility with a harness that could protect them from any form of impact-based magic. So considering the higher threat, I would imagine we would see a faster development of armor, so it wouldn't be strange to see more 16th century-like looking armor in the 15th century. Now we have a saying in Italian to describe that situation, and it's di necessità virtù, which could be translated roughly into you make a virtue out of need. So you do what you need to do. In terms of weapons, according to basically all fantasy games, mages are weak in hand-to-hand combat. We could however explore a different scenario in which mages could at least wear some form of armor, to at least give them some degree of protection without impeding their ability to cast a spell. After all, role-playing games are games, so they need to be balanced, but reality is not balanced. So although I wouldn't encase a mage from head to toe in full plate armor, I would still see it very possible and plausible to wear at least a certain degree of armor. After all, differently from games, real medieval archers, for example, did wear quite a bit of armor, including plate armor, and could still operate their bows without any problem, differently to popular belief. I don't see why a mage couldn't wear a breastplate, backplate and a helmet, for instance. Probably not a fully visored helmet, I'd imagine vision would be a very important aspect of spell casting, but at least a secret helm or a servilier, or even some form of bassinets with no visor, making them harder to kill. Even if equipped with a sword, a mage probably wouldn't really have enough time to practice it, due to the time needed to learn and master his spells, so still in hand-to-hand combat with highly trained men, mages would get killed. Maybe not on a one-on-one situation, but you know, if 20 men run him over. So battle tactics would definitely change, with strong knights having the duty to protect mages or having pike and magic formation, similar to the actual medieval pike and shot formation, a historical infantry combat formation that evolved during the Italian wars before the late 17th century evolution of the bayonet. The infantry formations of the period were a mix of pike and early firearms, either arquebusiers or musketeers. Society would be different. The way people live their lives would be different depending on how much magic would be part of their lives, proportionally. If magic were only used in battle or for military purposes, then probably wouldn't affect people's lives. The presence of powerful weapons such as the atom bomb doesn't really change the way people go about their lives unless you are hit with it. Perhaps anti-magic bunker-like shelters would be present in castles, but peasants and just normal citizens wouldn't be able to afford those. But if magic was present in every aspect, then it could be used to help farming, city guarding patrols, and etc. Then the towns would look very different. Magic could in a way do what machines do in our day and age, reducing significantly the amount of people needed to do a certain task, such as farming, possibly leading to the creation of new jobs, new magic-related jobs, such as mage helper, magic crystal cleaner, scrolls duster, magic library clerk, magic staff repairer. Magic aided guards might decrease significantly the crime rate in cities, or the crime rate could increase if some mages started going rogue. Economy and market would also be affected. The price of anything that is required to perform magic would skyrocket. These items would become precious goods, a commodity in high demand. This could increase the value of cost of ingredients for potions, or completely redefine the value of certain gems or metals over others if those proved to be better for spell casting. To give you an example, emeralds could become more valuable than diamonds if only through emeralds you could help conjuring the most powerful battle spells, for whatever scientific or magic reason. Copper might become more valuable than silver if silver turned out to be useless in magical application, while copper for some crazy reasons was capable to significantly amplify the power, range and duration of spells. Welcome to this similar, yet quite different world. Alright noble ones, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, become a noble one for more content from the Metatron. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Let me know your opinion in the comments below, and goodbye.